Hey, Gabe, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Welcome to the Lead with Hope podcast, and I'm glad that you came on today. I'm looking forward to interviewing you and hearing more about your story. So, without further ado, why don't you tell us who you are, why you became an educator, and the floor is yours.
Okay. Dr. Gabrielle Rodriguez. I am in my second year as superintendent at Central School District 104 in O'Fallon. That is my second superintendency. Before that, I spent 6 years in Sparta School District. And that was obviously my first go at the superintendency. Been in administration the majority of my career, taught 7 years in Cahokia, and then from there went straight to central office stuff. So worked with ROE 50 for a while and did a lot of school improvement grant work, ranging from as far north as Rock Island and as far south as Meridian. So thoroughly enjoyed that. But I do have to say, even though it has its challenges, I am enjoying the superintendency. Why I became an educator, that's a tricky one. I think that initially I thought that it would be a faster track than going to medical school. Always wanted to be a doctor or something. So it really aggravates me when people say, oh, you're not a real doctor. Educators aren't doctors. Well, yeah, we are. So I think that I thought it was going to be a little bit quicker, and always loved kids. I was the oldest of all the cousins and an older sister, and just loved being around kids. So played sports all my life, was a coach and a captain. And so I think that is a natural gateway to becoming an educator. So happy that I went the route that I did.
Yeah, I am too. I'm glad that our paths crossed through the Elevate cohort, and we're here today talking about your story. So 8 years as a superintendent. You were a superintendent through the pandemic, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So I don't want to ask you to relive trauma, but what do you think contributed to your success in your role, even though you were going through all of the traumas that everybody went through during that pandemic?
So I think that the childhood trauma and adulthood trauma prepare me for instances like COVID. So I kind of thrive on chaos. So when people talk about COVID, we rocked it. I listened. I took that time when we were at home to listen. So to join AASA and listen to all of the podcasts that they had and the organizational gatherings, that they held online, and learned as much as I could from every perspective. So I even got into a lot of the science behind COVID. And so I wasn't naive to think that it wasn't real, but I wasn't naive to think that it wasn't going to end either. So I was very, very, I guess, particular or intentional about following the guidelines to the best that we could. But we were one that we still opened. I was in Southern Illinois where a lot of people did not believe that it was a thing, and COVID did not scare them. So having to adhere to the guidelines, but then appease the people that really thought that it wasn't a thing was a little bit difficult. But I just used a lot of common sense and in forecasting, like knowing that we weren't going to need 8 million masks a year later because it would eventually go away. So, we continued learning. We did well with online learning when we had to do that. Thank God our parents were awesome and were able to get the kids on. We were able to get Wi-Fi and devices home with all the kids. So learning didn't really stop for us. And I don't think we could afford that. We could have afforded that. So the learning loss was not nearly as significant as it was in some places. But I think that was attributed to just continually learning and constantly engaging with different practitioners from across the world, even just kind of to inform myself of what this was so that I could keep my board and my community informed as well.
Yeah. And we know that hindsight's always 20/20, but, looking back at that, it did provide us with a lot of opportunities to expand our networks for the leaders to learn from people across the world. And that's one of the things that I think was a positive coming out of that. But I applaud you for not closing your schools, because that's another thing we know from hindsight is our kids needed that education, and they needed to be plugged in. They need to have the relationships with their teachers continue. And yes. So it took courage for those leaders like you that did that. So that's definitely a positive.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And, thinking about that, it kind of takes me to my next question. I mean, leaders that lead with courage, I believe, have to lead with hope. And my system of hope is a system of self-efficacy. H stands for habits, O for optimistic outlook, P for passion, purpose, and perseverance, and E stands for excellence. So, Dr. Gabe, what resonates most with you and why?
The P just jumped out at me when I had read that. So definitely everything that I do with passion. Sometimes people can interpret it in many different ways because it can be sometimes a little bit of aggressive, but I always try to take opportunities to insert that passion for doing. Otherwise, I think, why do it? And, if not me, then who? So definitely passion. There's always a purpose behind everything that we do. This conversation that we're having right now serves a big purpose to a greater audience. So, and most importantly, perseverance. And I think that people that have not even experienced any kind of trauma have to know that you can't give up, and your whole hope philosophy with self-efficacy is a beautiful thing, because I think that we need reminders like that. It's easy for me, who has a background with a little bit of tumultuous or dysfunction in my life to realize that on a daily, but I think people that have not even experienced tragedy or trauma or anything like that need to know that everything that you do, you have to persevere through it, because there are days where it's hard. It's hard to be a leader. It's hard to be an educator. It's hard to be a mother some days. But you have to persevere. You can't quit. Somebody has to get the job done. So I love the P. I love them all. I love all the letters, but definitely I'm a P.
Well, thank you. And I can see that in you. I can see that passion. It shines through. You have a huge heart. Just getting to know you over the last couple of years, I see that in everything that you do. I enjoy following you on social media and seeing some of your posts about the relationships you have with your staff and your students. So I can definitely affirm I see that passion in you, and that is what makes you great at what you do. But in thinking about that and thinking about your day-to-day life, we all go through that adversity or that trauma that we've kind of touched on here today. I don't know how vulnerable you want to be today, but is there something specific in your life that stands out to you as far as an adversity or a trauma? In my life, I talk about my brother drowning. That is the kind of foundation on which all of this is built. But for you, what stands out, and how did you overcome it to lead with hope?
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that story last week about your brother. It's very important to know that about you, because it makes you who you are. I'm always vulnerable. We'll talk in a little bit about, my most recent project, and it is extremely vulnerable. So I've had a lot of adversity through my life, and I would say that the constant theme is abuse. So whether it's mental, physical, mostly verbal, I've been through it all, beginning in childhood, at an early age. My father committed suicide when I was 11 months old. So my mother was left to raise me by herself, and she struggled with mental health as well, oftentimes depression. So our relationship was not always the best. So if I would say, how teenagers do sometimes, oh, I hate you, she would say that back to me. So that was how we lived. looking back and at the moment, often after it happened, of course she loved me and she would tell me that she loved me, but it was a very rocky relationship, very dysfunctional. I think she did the very best that she could with me. And the greatest gift that she gave me was a relationship with my grandmother that could never be replaced. So at age 11, encountered my first bout with sexual abuse. So I feel for very innocent children that have to go through that, because no one should have to, especially then when you share that and adults don't believe you. And then you suffer from a different kind of abuse once you expose that. So, and then most recently, I witnessed experienced domestic abuse. My son witnessed it when I was going through a divorce with my ex-husband. So, I've always been one of those, if, no one will do that to me, because everyone should be afraid of me because of that passion. I don't allow people to walk over me. But that's not something that you can plan for and not something that you can ever anticipate. So it happened. And, I think everything happens for a reason, and it was a lesson. All of them were. So I'm here. I overcame it. And hopefully I sent the message to my children that you don't tolerate that. And you can forgive people. But oftentimes, it's very hard to forget. And if you can move on and heal and allow that person to create a new life for themselves. And that's exactly what I did for me too. So.
Yeah, that's a powerful story. And, you talk about the lessons that you learned through those challenges, through those traumas. When you reflect on those lessons, is there something specific that you would tell women in leadership that you would point to that would indicate, these are the things that you need to do to persevere? It stands out.
I mean, I've never been one that needs a lot of friends. I don't have a big family. My entire family is gone now. Besides my children, they've all passed away. But I do think, specific to women in leadership, when you're in the role, it is important to find someone to network with and to build that trust and relationship with, because without it, even if it just focuses on work, I don't have to tell everyone my story, and I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me. That's not the whole point. But just to be able to have that support system to get through work, and experiences that we have as women on the job. I think you've got to have other women to help build you up, and to help listen to you when you're going into a tough board meeting or something like that. There has to be someone that you can share your story with. And for trauma kids and for trauma adults or anyone that's experienced hardship, trust is hard. It's still, I've done a lot of healing through my journey, but trust is still the biggest barrier that I face. But it seems that you can always find that one or two people, outside of what we've built with our Elevate network. You can always find someone with whom you're working with to build that connection and to help get you through. Yeah. Even if it's to vent about a fellow colleague, and I'm not for gossip and I'm not for that, but you've got to have someone to vent and someone to be that support to you, so that you don't take that home with you and impact your kids and affect your marriage with that. So.
Yeah. Self-reflection is important, but I completely agree with you. You have to have those people in your life who are going to provide, excuse me, that unconditional positive regard.
Yes.
They're in your corner. They've got your back. I got a tickle in my throat.
You do.
Goodness.
And I think once you find them, they're not everybody's out there to do that for you. There are still people that will judge you. There are people that are jealous. That exists in the realm of women in leadership. But there are those that have your back, that you can be vulnerable with. And I was a part of ISIL, and then being part of the Elevate network. I mean, I was very guarded going into both of those experiences, but the people that I walked away with, to have in my back pocket, to be able to say, hey, my ex-husband's doing this, is yours. Or, hey, I have a son that's now in the teenage years. I've never experienced this before with a boy. Can you help me? Because I know you have a son. Just to be able to have it, it's been invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very, very grateful for that.
Yeah. The Elevate cohort in my life has been a blessing. And I know you've had other opportunities. You've been able to do other programs through like ISIL and the Global Service Learning Trip and things like that. What would you say to superintendents that are considering that, especially women?
Oh, just do it. I have asked many women, they'll say, they'll kind of blow off ISIL, and I'll say, what are you afraid of? What are you scared of? Because I cried every single session until the very last one, because I was so broken. I was so hurt, dealing with personal and professional hurdles in my life. And if I would not have had that, I would not have made it. I would not be standing today, because there were many days where it was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. And I watched other people go through that, and the global service project, I never left Illinois. Maybe Missouri to go floating on the river or something, but never another country. So when that opportunity came, I don't know, I have to give that one to God, because that's not something I would have applied for. And had I not, I would not have met, my other half and my true soulmate, and inherited this beautiful family from another country that we now have to go to, and to find refuge and peace and love. So you have just don't be scared. Do it. I've always been one of those. When I finished a degree, I was ready for the next. Like, don't ever stop learning, and don't become complacent, because that's when you become miserable, and then that's when you experience burnout. And I think that the longer you continue to learn and embark on new experiences, the better educator and certainly better leader you will be for your district.
I completely agree with you. And, talking about continual learning through these different programs, another way that I feel like you learn about yourself. I know it's been very cathartic for me. It's been a personal growth opportunity, and that's writing. And so that kind of leads us to the next question, Gabe. As far as your passion project, I know that is writing your book. So tell us about your book, and a little bit more about how that came to be and where people can find that.
So I always felt like an outcast, a black sheep, that I was experiencing things throughout my entire childhood and adulthood that other people had not experienced. But when you talk to people and you get to know them, you find that though their problems may be different, they still exist. Perfect marriages aren't a thing. Wonderful childhoods, though they exist, there's always something. So just throughout the years, people saying, wow, you've been through so much. You really should share your story. That never gave me the motivation to want to write a book. Me wanting to free myself and heal from all of the abuse, for the way that I was raised, how I felt. And I know that, I have a half sister that looks at life from a completely different angle than I do, because she was close with our mother, and, she was accepted and loved, and she felt a completely different way. So it was very hard growing up to verbalize and to express the way that I was feeling, because people did not see it that way. So, through this, going through a very hard divorce after a 25-year relationship and worrying about what it would do to 4 wonderful kids. I had to get it out of me. And I had to go all the way back. I had to dig it up. And I had to, every piece that was holding me down or suffocating me, I had to let it go. I wish now that I would have done that a lot earlier. I wish I would have seen and experienced ISIL prior to any of my family passing away, because I would have made those relationships so much better and so much more meaningful, because I would have been a different person. I held resentments in, and the way that I felt things were going in. And I wasn't perfect by any means. I mean, I'm not, there are many days I think, wow, I really was not a good person in that situation, or, that should have been done differently, or, whatever it may be.
Right.
But me getting that frustration and that I always say I put my pain to paper. Mm-hmm. So once I got that pain out on paper, it was an incredible feeling. When I got it printed and put in my hand, mm-hmm. that was a feeling on a whole different level. And I had it for about a year before releasing it, because I knew what that impact would be.
Yeah.
I only have a sister left. Mm-hmm. And she never read it. I made sure that, I self-published and I sold the books, and I knew who to sell them to and who not to. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not trying to hurt people in the process of helping myself. So, right. It has damaged some relationships. My children asked to read it, and they revered my mother in a very different light than what I experienced as her child. Mm-hmm. And I tried to explain that to them. But then at that point, after the childhood, I had all of the dysfunction and the turmoil with their father. So I chose to write about that, and I chose to publish it. Mm-hmm. So that's been very hard for some of my children to understand, but I didn't use names. I didn't, people can infer who they are, I guess. But I didn't mean for it to go to an audience that was so close that they would think, oh, that's Gabe and that's her family. That wasn't the intent. The intent was the broader scope of, maybe our professional network, people that could benefit from it and could really see some hope in their future from reading it. And so far that, that hasn't happened. I still struggle with women who promote women who have written books in our field, but they're professional books. So let's praise them and let's promote them. But because mine is very personal, very vulnerable. Oh, yeah, you wrote a book, but it's about you. So we're not going to promote you or celebrate you. So that's been, just being very honest, that's been, there's been some moments where I've had to reflect and think, wow, should you have done this? Like, should you? And at the end of the day, before I lay down at night, I have to say, yeah, you should have, because the healing that it did for me, and then looking back and realizing that even though I may have perceived my relationship with my mother one way, in actuality, that was a teenage brain. That was a childhood brain. That was an adolescent brain who was having kids and working and going to school and never having the time to reflect. So through that reflection, it made me look at my experiences very differently. So I have a lot of hope that things will work themselves out in the future. That those who are meant to be in my life will be in my life, and those who choose not to be, that's not my business and it's not in my control. So I have to focus on on those that want to be a part of my life. So,
and
so
just
go ahead.
Sorry, just the title of your book, Becoming Me. It is a process. It makes me think of the beautiful butterfly coming from the transformation from a caterpillar to a beautiful butterfly. And what you did was for the healing to happen. That's what you needed for that healing to happen. And so for that reason, only you can say if it's worthwhile or not. Yeah. And my hope for you is that healing process will continue to evolve and get better and better as you go forth. And in addition to that, I think we have to remember that somebody told me not too long ago that your parents are different parents to you than they were to, say, your sister. I have a brother. My parents were not the same parents to me, the oldest child, as they were to my brother, the youngest child. It was different. And so people need to understand, in my opinion, people should understand that and should look at that in terms of this is your experience, this is who you are, and this is your path. And again, that vulnerability, it takes courage. And if it's promoting healing within you, then it's worth it.
Yeah, I think so. I hope so. That's all we can do is hope.
That's all you can do. And one day at a time, and I think that as the process unfolds, we're all striving to be the best version of ourselves as we are doing the things that we're doing in our profession and in our personal life. And so keep showing up and showing out, Gabe. And as we wrap up today, can you tell our audience, if they want to get a copy of your book, Becoming Me, how can they get in contact with you?
They can go to Becoming Me Enterprises. That's my website, and you can order straight through there. I am not a superintendent that hides my email. So if you go to central104.org, you can find my email address, get a hold of me. But I own the rights to Becoming Me Enterprises, so that you'll find it right on the website.
All right, Gabe. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your story. And I look forward to following your journey.
Thank you, Brandy.
Yep. Have a great day.
You too.